right, welcome back, fellow jazz bums. We are going to jump into a upcoming release being put out by Sam Records. It's going to be 2 Sun Ra titles on their Artisan series. Before we jump into it, remember to like and subscribe. We also have the Jazz Bums Discord, so I'll drop an invite link in the description below. And then we also live stream every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, so come and hang out with us there as well. All right, so let's jump into it. Felipe, where should we start?
All right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris. Well, I think this reissue has been thought of. It's a title on transition that Tone Poets have been releasing transition last year. There's probably gonna some more to come. But again, what's the importance? What Sam Ra was transition? Was this artisan series? Let's go deep into that, right? So in 1954, this guy from Texas, from Waco, Texas, Tom Wilson, he graduates from Harvard. He borrows $900 and decides to start a music label. The label's called Transition, and his goal was to record the most unique, the most important new jazz artists, a transition, people that were really on the edge. So, and to his credit, he recorded first time as leaders, people like Curtis Fuller, John Coltrane, Cecil Taylor, and of course today's subject, Sun Ra. Transition didn't live for too long. In late 50s, pretty much they stopped operations there. He goes work with rock. Apparently, Tom decides, no, rock is actually the way of the future, so I'm going to work with rock artists. So he works with a lot of people. Nico, the Velvet Underground, Bob Dylan's first electric band. He goes to work also with Simon Garfunkel and many others. He becomes very successful in his career. So in '68, Transitions tapes are sold either to Blue Note, some are sold to Delmark in Chicago. And of course, Sun Ra is a Chicago artist, as we know very well. So here's the connection there. Those records were recorded in 1956. So let's talk about it more. So
Sure.
Yeah.
I've been interested in the Transition catalog. They have a number of really great releases. We've seen some other reissues this past or last year on Blue Note. They put out, I think, 3 Donald Byrd titles. Sam Records has also put out a Donald Byrd title on Transition maybe 3 years ago or so. I think that was the first artisan release. And yeah, they're fun records to collect. I do have one. It's the compilation that they put out, and it does feature Sun Ra on it. The first track on the record is a Sun Ra track from the first session recording, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's not a track that was put out on the release, so I wasn't able to do a one-to-one comparison. But still, it's the same session, same recording, and it's pressed in many cases polystyrene. So there are noise issues with that. And then also the jackets didn't have a back on it. And I think that was due to budgetary restrictions based on that he was young and starting out this new label. And that's also why they included booklets, I believe, since they didn't have liner notes on the back. So we'll get into the booklets that are included in this reissue, which are very cool in their own regard.
Yeah, these are really good, cool releases. I mean, the ones that Blue Note did were the 2 Donald Byrds and a Doug Watkins, and they sounded really good, and so do these. So Fred from Sam Records was very generous, and he sent us all preview copies of both of these releases, which we were super excited to listen to. Let's talk about maybe the packaging to begin with. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, go for it, Chris. Yeah.
Covers and stuff. Yeah,
crack it up.
So this is the second one, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, this is volume 2. The first volume is gold, and the second volume that never actually came out is silver. These are all silkscreen printed manually, and then the backs don't have anything on them either. But they're kind of texturized, really nice. Got a really nice sleeve. Then the records themselves came in just kind of a generic, sleeve to prevent, seam splits on the other jackets or whatever. And then the records themselves, just to get this out of the way, both of mine were just like dead flat, completely quiet. really great pressings. Do we know where these were pressed at? Were they pressed at the new place that he's been using for the last few records? Okay.
Yes, they were pressed at Marcillac, France, and Garcia and Company, which I believe is a small press that Fred from Sam Records has been using on his most recent releases. And I think it gives him an ability to have more kind of quality control over the pressing process.
So yeah, this is a very luxury package. Actually, topped my expectations. I think it's the first record that I see put together like that. So about the cover, it was just like this gold, strokes place, kind of resembling like an early Mondrian painting. It's pretty cool. And of course, all the subsequent reissues, they did not use this cover. And also interesting about is the booklet, which we're going to go about.
Yeah.
So Tom Wilson actually, because yes, I mean, Sun Ra always had this philosophical, beyond music message he tried to convey, right? About the present, the future, eternity, the planets, harmony, and everything. So, and the music matches that. So Tom Wilson gave him the opportunity. Okay, so the booklet is yours. Put down your manifesto there, talk about it, and that's what you have, the complete original booklet as it was. So yeah. So how is that?
It's freaking awesome. I mean, the first booklet, like you were saying, it's written by Sun Ra himself, and it's got a bunch of his poetry in it. It's got several of the tunes, like the poems behind them, because he talks about how music is poetry, and a lot of his music is based on poems he had written, which I think is really neat.
He also mentions a Downbeat interview with Duke Ellington, and says that Duke states that he's not trying to educate people with his music, and Sun Ra goes directly at that, saying that I am trying to do that. So in terms of kind of this representing a manifesto, it really does kind of do that. And to think that this is the first lead record that Sun Ra puts out, and this is the companion notes that come with it, I feel like it makes it an exceptional piece because it charts out a lot of the orchestra and Sun Ra's philosophy. So that is just something that was really cool that I wasn't aware of before getting into this.
Yeah, I'm saying. Now let's go through. I wanted to go through who the players are on here, because some of these names are familiar from people that have, that were with him forever. But let's just on the first record. Let's go through. We got Sun Ra on piano, Art Hoyle on trumpet, Dave Young on trumpet, John Avant on trombone, Pat Patrick on alto and baritone, and then John Gilmore, which we all know, on tenor sax, Charles Davis on baritone, Victor Sproles on bass, William Bugs Cochran on drums, and then Jim Herndon on timpani and timbali. That's on volume 2, actually. So I read the wrong one, but that's okay.
I think it's a similar lineup.
It is similar, but I think, let's see, Julian Priester, it's a little different. So Julian Priester's on the first one on trombone, and then Robert Barry's playing drums, and Richard Evans is on bass.
Okay.
So it's a slightly different lineups. What's interesting too, this is 1956, and there's a guy named Wilburn Green that plays electric bass.
Yeah.
It seems super early for an old school electric Fender.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the use of electric instruments comes from his previous record. So this is like his second record as a leader. His the year previously, he had a record with this band called El Saturn, another orchestra called El Saturn. Many of those players, and the name of the release is Supersonic Jazz, and it was already doing this interplay using electric bass or acoustic bass and pianos and adding a lot of instruments and textures to make statements, right? So then Tom Wilson invites him to record these sessions for him in 1956. And how did they go, Mike?
So there are 2 sessions. Chris mentioned the personnel for both of them being slightly different, with Benny Green in the July session, and then there's also a early November session that rounds out the second one. And I think this speaks to the timing, speaks to when the transition label essentially became defunct, and the second session was never put out. which is why when Delmark acquired that piece of the transition catalog, they reissued it along with the first one. So yeah, those are the 2 sessions.
And where were they recorded?
In Chicago. What was the studio, Felipe?
Universal Recording Studio.
Yeah, I believe both of them are Universal Recording in Chicago.
Which was the top of the line, the best studio available in Chicago those days. So it's no surprise that these records, despite being like a budget, super small label, they sound so great. They sound so great. And I think
that's the key with all these transition reissues that we've seen so far, right? Like the originals, to Mike's point, they might have sounded okay, but they were on cheap ass polystyrene and were noisy. But the tapes were recorded extremely well. I mean, they mentioned in the booklet too that they were recorded, you know, on Ampex tape players or tape recorders, obviously, and then using all Telefunken microphones.
Yeah.
So they were recorded to be high fidelity records, obviously. Right?
Yeah. So and they were so since these are 56 sessions. All right. So since they're 56 sessions, both of these are mono, and I do feel like the mono is really well recorded. I mean, it really does speak to how the recording engineers and the quality of the equipment that they were using was there, because it has huge amounts of depth that I heard, and then there is a soundstage that really, you know, opens things up. And I'm sure the mastering that was done by Kevin Gray, you know, helped expose that. But I felt like the recording on this pressing sounded very good.
Yes, I agree. I was going to make the same point. I'm listening in a big room with big speakers, and that is actually very true. I could feel like wide sound, wide, very compelling. And at some point, you might even say, "Wow, this is stereo," because there's things here and there, but it's, of course, it's a mono, and that's how I felt. I think probably, you know, great capturing initially from the tape, and great work that Kevin did by making high res transfers from this mastering from these tapes, so those records could be cut and issue. It's just great stuff. Really good, really well done. Sound wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this fits into, I mean, the quality of the recording, the quality of the transfers and mastering to the, you know, pressing, and the jacket fits into Fred's you know, series that he's got going. I mean, the last one was the Django, right, in this series?
The Artisan, yes.
So the Artisan series is a special limited edition series. Generally, Fred does like to keep his records in print, and he will reissue things. The Artisan series is not. It is limited, and this will be limited to 500 copies per title. The pre-order will be up February 1.
I think before we dive into the music now, let's just one more, I think, interesting historic point. So in '68, those records are first reissued by Delmark as Volume 1 and 2 with different names, right?
Yep.
So it's actually pretty cool that we're seeing Volume 2 and Volume 1 released now as a back-to-back reissue. So although it's the same body of music, pretty much, we can pinpoint and highlight some differences between those records and those sessions. And let's talk about it now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last thing about the booklets that kind of leads into this, right? The first one, obviously, Sun Ra wrote, and it's really interesting, has all his thoughts and details in it. The second one is mainly based on the liner notes from the reissue that Delmark did, which I think is also awesome context, right? So I really enjoyed reading the two of those while I was listening. The two albums, I've listened to both of them twice now. I feel like I'm gonna have to listen to these like 6, 7, 8 more times to really understand all that's going on, because it's a lot of it's a bigger band, right? I mean, it's not like a giant big band with like 40 people or anything, but it's a big band for all intents and purposes, right? But so the music to me is very compelling because it's got hard bop elements, but it's a big band, which is kind of different, right? And then there's early free jazz sounds in there, and experimentation, and all of his early space stuff you can hear in there. Like there's some parts where they're playing timpani in it, and it's like he's like the guy's playing timpani's like changing the pitch, and just it's all really weird sounding and kind of spacey, right? So it feels like very early on he already had in his brain, you know, he obviously had this point of I want to experiment and innovate and change the music, but also this kind of, you know, ancient Egypt / space, you know, that he went down the road he went down later is evident here too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
he says
very
that.
very compelling music.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it too. I was familiar with Volume 2 because we had a copy locally here. I played that record many times. Regarding the timpani is pretty interesting because he uses the timpani and he also uses wood blocks in some songs. He has two baritone sax alongside this timpani to make like a full and rich bottom end, which I think contributes to this sense of like being big and spacious and very attractive to the listener. I think it kind of involves you, makes it sound bigger, and probably that's what helps with the whole sound, sensation as well. And on the first, but at the same time, right? I think he's also a lot into orchestra. He has an orchestra. He's a guy from the 30s, the 40s, so he had a big influence by orchestras and classical music like Debussy and Stravinsky, like many others from those days. So you can hear like hints of Duke Ellington's orchestra on New Horizons, for example. And Sound of Sun is a tribute to Art Tatum. He plays electric and acoustic piano against each other. You know, so there's a lot there. It's hard to classify. Don't even try to label what's going on in that album, I think.
I think it'll be interesting for us to take a quick look at the Delmark reissue covers. So this is Sun Ra Sun Song. This is the first reissue of the transition title on Delmark. So you can see that it does have different cover art, but the song sequence is the same. And this came out in 1967. So I think that's right when Delmark picked up these tapes. Then we also have the Sound of Joy. So this is that November session, and this is the first time it was issued. I believe this is 1968. And yeah, so this is the November one. And Chris, you were mentioning that the liner notes that are included in the Sam Records reissue does include the same liner notes that were on that first issue. So so those are the two.
So what do you think about the music, Mike?
I really liked it. I felt like it's straight ahead in a sense, but there's also some edge to it. Like it kind of kept me thinking about what's coming next. So there was like some tension in the playing that that did make it feel a little different to me than just like some straight ahead orchestrated group. I really enjoyed it. I really, honestly, I really love these two sessions, and to get them in like this premium deluxe sleeve and kind of the historic piece of it with the manifesto. I will put these up there with my Charlie Parker records. Like these are really nice pieces to have. And I'm just really, kind of blown away by it. So I'm relatively new to collecting Sun Ra. I have a little bit of his ESP disc releases. I have his Savoy release. So so I have a few things. I have one of the Impulses, a Magic City as well. Each of those are very different. But as someone who's starting to explore his catalog more in depth, these are really nice to have. So I definitely encourage people to explore this reissue if you can. But if not, those Delmark reissues might be something to also explore. They may be a more affordable option. We'll talk about what we anticipate the price of this reissue to be a little bit later. But those are that's kind of my high level first impression.
So I really enjoyed, and you mentioned this briefly, Felipe, but I really enjoyed the tracks where he plays electric piano and piano because it's within the same solo, which is just weird, right? And really
Yeah.
cool. Like, I mean, he'll just be playing piano. You're like, oh yeah, it's cool. And all of a sudden, it's this weird ass early '50s, electric piano. Which I looked this up, and these albums are mentioned as like some of the earliest electric piano recordings. I mean, the electric piano was the first ones were invented like in the 20s and 30s, but I think it said Duke Ellington put one out in '55, and then it mentioned these Sun Ra recordings. So I thought that was really neat. Another thing, and this is mentioned, I think, and maybe in the liner notes or I just read it somewhere, but the whole contrapuntal thing where there's two different melodies kind of playing off of each other is all over this entire recordings. Like you'll have a track, and let me see if I can
even in different keys, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So specifically, is this volume 1? In volume 2 on the second side? I think Ankh or Saturn. Those first two tunes on there, those are both. Those are all Sun Ra compositions, but they come across as kind of a. To me, they come across as kind of a straight ahead, hard bop ish, but a big band setting, right? They swing hard and all that, but then when you really start listening to like what he's doing on the piano. Like, so they'll have like the beginning of the theme of the song, and then they'll have all these solos, and he'll kind of play along like he's comping, but then he's kind of playing something that's not even the same song, and it just flows in and out with the soloists so well. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's take home message for me was like, okay, first and foremost, most important, he was trying to convey a message, right? To tell people what people should feel or should react to his music in a sense, especially by his writing. I also think we have a sense of development there. That is music that you can picture it behind that, ahead of it, but he doesn't seem to make any conscious effort to fit in with what was going on. If you think 57 was like probably the peak of hard bop,
right?
And he's not doing that at all, and he's not even trying to sound like that. Maybe because he was kind of feeling upset, or geographically, musically, he just wanted to distance himself from the scene and say, "That's me." The orchestration, the different odd, time signatures, his choices in what he was playing, and most important, he was. Although there's a sense of weirdness, as you pointed out really good, Chris, there's such a complexity behind it. And although this is easy to listen music, very easy, you can play on a dance. People could definitely go after it, but it also, I think Mike said, gives a feeling of some uneasy to it, right? It kind of, there's some tension there. You feel like, what's going on? But you can still dance to it. So I think that's genius. And the reviews actually were really poor when the record came out.
Yeah.
I mean, this undecidedness, what he's doing. And it's good, but it doesn't go anywhere. But when they reissued them in the late 60s, the critics are way more generous and kind of, okay, that's what he's doing. So that's pretty cool.
Well, they also had another decade of his progression to lean on, and understand. I've always been, before, so I've got the Savoy reissue that Kraft put out, 3 years ago, probably now. Futuristic Sounds of Sun Ra, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's after this, right? Obviously, this was like his first record, so that came after this. So I had that, and I really enjoyed that. But I haven't gotten into the later stuff. But I really want to. I think I want to kind of dive into his catalog, which is huge. I mean, he put out over 100 LPs. He's got one of the largest discographies of any artist in any genre. Period. So there's a lot out there.
Yeah, Dave from Local Bandography said it was well above 200, which which is pretty incredible. And yeah, I've been trying to get into it as well. On the edges of the El Saturn records, I say that because those have really spiked in value, and they're very rare and expensive to get. But those are pretty fun. And then Zev also put out a number of Sun Ra live recordings. He put this past Black Friday Record Store Day, he released one. I think he released one 2023, and then I think there were previous ones as well. So yeah.
And plus, you can there are great CD boxes of Sun Ra. There's one called Space is the Place, which is really good. and many others. You know,
Yeah.
probably with nice books and everything. That's really worth checking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. So, what is the price of these going to be, Mike? Do we know?
So the exact price was not shared
Okay.
by Fred to me in any of the correspondence. Previous artisan series, I believe, are above $100. I'm not sure if they're 125 or 150. So we'll see, but they will be, you know, $100 or more per title.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're going to be expensive.
I was gonna say they're an investment for sure, but I mean, just having them in my possession, I do see the value there, right? And there's going to be 500 copies of these only, so that's, you know, something that's going to support that price point too, is obviously.
Okay, and then some bonus news on the Sam Records website yesterday. There was an announcement for a Bud Powell title. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Bud Powell, Paris 1962. This is also going to be limited. I believe it's exclusive to Sam Records for distribution, and there are going to be 500 hand number copies available. So we just wanted to put this on everyone's radar as well, that there is a Bud Powell live album that's coming out as well.
Now, can you order this now today?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Cool.
This looks like it's a comp from 62, 64. It's a really interesting comp because it's solo piano. Francis Podra, he was an author, musician as well, and he helped a lot. But Paul, after he moved to France, he was being exploited, abused, and I'm not going to get into details. But he finally got him as his protege and to live at his place. And by being a musician, have access to equipment and knowing how to work on the piano as well, he managed to record Bud multiple times. And in his book, he mentions those sessions are better than what he heard him play live at the Blue Note many times. And so I think it's a really nice, remarkable, great historical importance recordings. And definitely it's one I'm definitely going to check because I like Bud, and this is considered to be one of the most prolific periods of his career in terms of tone and approach playing. It was like his early life is more like a mature player there, so I'm really eager to get a copy of this one.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I mean, he'd been doing it for 20 years at this point, right? So that's very interesting, and him just playing solo is pretty compelling. So there's also Fred does this a lot. There's samples on the website you can listen to.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Right. So I would anticipate that the Sun Ra will also have samples, but for all the releases, there's usually 3 or so songs that you can listen to just to get a sense of the music. So since this is something that I don't believe has been released before, it's nice that you can go and sample it before making a decision.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We'll drop a link to Sam's website, but it's pretty easy to find. And yeah, so the Sun Ra will go up for pre-order February 1 and should be shipping, shortly after. I don't believe there's an announced date just yet. But if you're interested, I would encourage you to get the pre-order in. And then, yeah, let us know if you're interested in this title. If you have the Delmark reissue, or if you have an original pressing of the first title, let us know.
That'd be nuts.
So we didn't talk about the value of that, but that is upwards in the thousands of dollars for the record. It's quite an expensive record to get. So let us know if you have any experience listening to that, the sound quality of the original. We all agree that the sound quality that is on this Artisan reissue is excellent. So let us know if you're going to get it. Also remember to like and subscribe, and please share, and we'll see you guys next time.